Haley Welch described spitting on a guy's ding-a-ling with a charming accent and immediately became extremely famous. But is the Tuah phenomenon a scam? Find out in my regular segment, Is It a Scam? Yep, but not in the way you think. This video was inspired by Jamie Loftus's incredible podcast, 16th Minute, which you simply must go listen to. Let's start with a shockingly short timeline. Haley makes a joke about giving a beach to a couple of small YouTubers in June 2024. In August, she threw out the first pitch at a Mets game. By December, she had released a crypto scam. She's speedrun both fame and crime. Was the Hawk coin a scam? Yep, of course, because all meme coins are scams. But the thing about Haley's journey is she didn't set out to do a crypto scam. She didn't even set out to be famous. She just went to a bar with her friend. Outside of the bar, she was accosted by a couple of YouTube guys who'd ask women dirty questions and try to get their phone numbers. It's the second worst kind of video behind prank videos. She's drunk and thus can't consent, not that they really gave her an opportunity. And also the short version makes her seem very enthusiastic, but the long version, it's clear she doesn't want to be there, and even includes a part where she says,
"If I say all right anymore,
oh yeah, and that blows. She went into hiding, during which time she got to see a bunch of people profiting off her. And that's a lot to swallow. So she hired a lawyer and manager to try to get something out of all of this mess, and that's when they showed up. The con men who use people like Haley. All of this was led by Jake Paul, whose curse upon the earth began with prank videos. So she was dragged around by the worst people to promote the worst things, to try to get something, anything, out of being made famous against her will by sleazy YouTubers. So did she do a Bitcoin scam? Yep. But was she also the victim of a scam? Also, yep. Flights are already miserable and expensive, but at least a lot of the airlines give you an option to pay for a magical get-out-of-jail-free card for the pollution you're creating. And that's definitely not a scam, is it? Find out on my recurring segment, Is It a Scam? Yep. Carbon offsets are the idea that instead of not polluting, you can pay someone else to not pollute on your behalf. If that sounds like weird dystopian bankshot environmentalism, you're not going to love to find out that it's actually completely fake weird dystopian bankshot environmentalism that might actually make things worse. But how is it even supposed to work? So you want to do something bad, so what you do is you find somebody else and you pay them to either do something good or do less bad stuff than they were planning, and then it offsets itself. The main problem, and this causes difficulties in all kinds of arenas, is it turns out it's very easy to lie. You can say that you were about to cut down a tree, but if somebody gives you 20 bucks, now you won't, but it's almost impossible to prove that you were going to, now you actually won't, and that you didn't tell 1,000 other people that you were saving the same tree on their behalf. Or sometimes they plant trees with your money and then don't water it, or the money goes to developers of a wind farm who were going to build it anyway. But what's even worse is that companies who promise to get to net zero use this as an excuse to keep polluting more, so it can actually double the losses. Here's an expert explaining how the system works.
Oh, so it all has to even out? Easy. Banana. Fuck. Banana. Take a butt.
So they're all a cover story for things you were going to do bad anyway that allows you to keep doing it and maybe even do more bad things, only making everything more expensive and somehow worse. But is it a scam yet? BMI, or body mass index, is constantly mentioned by the news and by doctors, so it must be a very carefully calculated scientific measurement that everybody agrees is super useful and important. Or is it a scam? Find out on my recurring segment, Is It a Scam? Yep. BMI was invented in the 1830s, by a Belgian astronomer, red flag number 2, to try to figure out what the average soldier looked like. That should be enough. That should be the end of the video, but we press on. There was a fad at the time for measuring things and finding averages, so he set out to find the perfectly average human, and by that he meant white guy, specifically Scottish Highland soldier. The formula he invented was weight over height squared, and the reason why he chose to square height was vibes, I guess. There's no good reason. It does kind of remind me of the formula for gravity, so maybe he was like heavenly bodies, earthly bodies, square stuff. What it does, though, is if you're a few inches taller or shorter than the average Scottish Highland soldier in the 1830s, it totally throws the measurements off. So it doesn't work if you're tall or short. It also doesn't work if you're old or young. It also doesn't work if you work out, because it can't tell the difference between muscle and fat. And of course, it can't differentiate between types of fat, some of which are correlated with negative health outcomes and some of which aren't. And you're going to be shocked to learn this. It really only works if you're white. Essentially, it only works if you're Scotch warriors. And look, I'm just a guy who listens to a lot of podcasts and then talks fast, but the American Medical Association says not to use it. I guess you could use it in stories about the obesity epidemic among young 5'9" European soldiers who are dedicated to protecting the homeland but not working out too much, but any other context, using BMI is a scam. Yep. Jeff Bezos is either a tiny man handling his midlife crisis with steroids or a very large thumb. But is he a scam? Find out in another thrilling episode of Is It a Scam? Yep. Jeffrey gave up his job as a hedge fund manager in 1994 to open open a bookstore, which would be a very charming story if at any point he ever seemed to care about books. He insists in interviews that it was actually just an ideal commodity to get a foothold in online sales, which he hoped to someday turn into a monopoly. He was able to make that dream a reality using only grit, determination, and a $300,000 loan from his parents. As Amazon grew, he stuck to 4 key principles. Number 1, never pay taxes. He built his business by undercutting brick and mortar stores by not having to pay sales tax. He also avoided corporate tax, including in 2019 where they paid literally zero tax on $10 billion in profit. And even though he has so much money his yacht has a yacht, he almost never pays personal taxes. Principle number 2, never compete in an open market. Once he got his monopoly by not paying taxes, he protected it by buying up potential competitors, blocking sellers from offering cheaper prices anywhere else, and rigging search results in its own favor. Number 3, never treat employees like people. From toxic company culture in the corporate office to monitoring every second of warehouse workers' lives so that they even have to pee in bottles to not get fired for taking breaks. And of course, rule number 4, look as creepy as possible in every photograph ever taken of you. And then last week, Lil Jeffrey announced that the storied newspaper he's been quickly destroying is only allowed to publish opinions about free markets and personal liberties, 2 of the things he's worked his whole career to make sure don't apply to his companies or his workers. And his reason was those are the pillars that built America, a country he cares so much about building that he's never allowed himself to pay his share of the taxes. But is Thumbelina a scam? Yep. You've already heard too much about egg prices, but are they a scam? Find out in a completely unsurprising episode of my hit series, Is It a Scam? Yep. Everybody who isn't lying to you knows the main reason egg prices are up is the bird flu. But if this isn't your first time watching the show America, then you've probably got a hint that there's something else going on, and it might involve a character from several seasons ago. The biggest egg producer in the US is called Cal Maine, and as the name doesn't suggest, they're headquartered in Mississippi. And they are very good at raising prices. Now, generally, every company would love to raise prices, but they don't because they don't want you to be mad at them. But if they know you're already mad, then it's easy to sneak in some extra price hikes. The same way, if you're already sending a bad email, you might sneak in a little bit of extra bad news, like, oh, this isn't good enough, and also I'm going to be on vacation next week. Back during the pandemic, even though their supply chain didn't get more expensive at all, the vibes were bad, so they used that as an excuse to raise prices, and they made over $1 billion in windfall profit because of it. During the 2023 bird flu, they raised prices despite not having a single bird get infected, and kept the prices high for 6 months after that flu was over. Whether it's birds or humans, if something's getting sick, they're getting rich. The main way we would prevent that is an outdated idea called competition, but of course, Cal Maine has been buying up their competitors since the early 80s. They were already convicted of using their cartel-like powers to raise prices in 2011. And what kind of business does better when a disease wipes out their entire product? The monopoly kind. So egg prices are high because of a bad thing that's in nobody's control, and also a bad thing that was in control of one particular bonzo. But is it a scam? Yep.